Hi guys, welcome to my video, and today we're going to be looking at some past exam questions for microeconomic topics. In particular, we're going to look at scarcity, allocation of resources, opportunity costs, and production possibility frontiers or curves. We'll go through some of the past exam papers and just pick out questions which relate to those topics and explain the correct and maybe more importantly explain the incorrect answers and why these are the case. So let's look at January 2012's microeconomics paper and question 2. Now this is a question in which you have a production possibility curve looking at from a macroeconomic point of view. So you can see the different combinations of public and private goods that can be produced within an economy. Because it's within an economy, this is why it's a macroeconomic PPF as opposed to a micro one, which would look at individual firms' choices between combination of goods they can produce. So the question is all about when the economy is operating on the frontier, so any point on this curve, what will happen if there's an increase in the production of public goods? Okay, so what this means is whilst we're on this curve, which represents all the different combination of points that an economy can produce on, from public goods to private goods, what will happen if the curve goes in the direction of public goods and therefore increases production of public goods? Well, answer A says have no effect on the price of private goods because public goods are free. Or if anything, an increase in public goods would mean there's less private goods available, which would push the price of these private goods higher. So we can rule out option A. B means reduction in the production of private goods. This answer is correct because if we move along the frontier towards or increasing our production in public goods, which would be represented by an increase or horizontal movement upwards on the y-axis, this means there would be less production of private goods, okay, which would be shown on the x-axis here. So therefore the correct answer is B. Remember, production possibility frontiers show us the trade-offs between two different types of goods and the different possibilities of producing those goods at a given time with all of the available resources. So therefore, let's imagine a government wanted to increase public goods because they're going to raise taxes, and let's imagine, for example, a Labour government which provides more healthcare. Therefore, in an economy, there would be less resources being allocated towards private healthcare. So therefore, this would decrease. Let's just quickly explain why C and D are not correct. So C, increased total output because public goods are non-rival. Remember, an increase in total output would be shown by a shift outwards of the production possibility frontier. And this would be because there's more resources available, or resources have improved. Or D, increased opportunity cost of private goods. Well, the production possibility frontier shows all of the different opportunity costs anyway, so there hasn't been an increase in the opportunity cost of private goods. Whenever a firm or an economy moves along its production possibility frontier from, for example, this point to this point, the opportunity cost is those goods that you give up or forego producing because of that movement along the curve. So therefore, the opportunity costs are already fixed when the curve is drawn, and therefore by increasing the production of public goods, this doesn't mean opportunity cost has increased. It's the same it would have been when the curve was first drawn. Okay, let's skip through to question 20 now. So question 20, at all points on a country's production possibility frontier, so we were just looking at a production possibility frontier, and let's just have a look back at that. So we're looking at the question's asking us something about all points on the curve itself. So what's going to happen at all points on the curve? So we're excluding points within the curve or points outside of the curve. And the possible answers are A, all firms are benefiting from economies of scale. Now, this is not necessarily true, because it could be that if we imagine that production possibility frontier had said capital goods on the y-axis and consumer goods on the x-axis, for example, it might be the case that lots of firms are producing trains, a good used in the economy, and one of those particular firms is achieving economies of scale because they have high levels of output. However, one more firm producing trains might produce trains at quite a small output, which means they don't yet achieve economies of scale, um, which is obviously represented by increasing capacity to reduce unit costs. However, combining these two firms together could mean that the country and the economy is efficient, and this is why they're on that point. Sorry, I should just go back and explain that at any point on this production possibility frontier, this shows productive efficiency, which means that the economy is maximizing its output with its given levels of inputs or resources. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily show that all firms have achieved economies of scale. B, productive efficiency is achieved. Well, there we go. It's what I just explained. Productive efficiency is achieved because with all the given resources or factors of production available to the economy, they're maximizing their outputs. And it doesn't matter what combination of goods they're maximizing the outputs with a given level of resources. Let's just explain why C and D are not correct. C, each point is equally socially desirable because output is at its maximum. Now, this isn't true because the production possibility frontier doesn't tell us what people want or prefer. It just tells us what level of output is being achieved. Okay, if we're looking at socially desirable outcomes, this would be called allocative efficiency, and we would need to look at what consumers prefer between two different sets of goods within an economy, for example, public or private goods. Okay, just because a point would be reached on the production possibility frontier doesn't mean this is a point that people would be happy with. Okay, if we go back again and there are a point reached in which there's maximization of public goods but zero private goods produced, this would be productively efficient because the economy are on their PPF, but lots of people might have preferred private goods or private healthcare, for example, being produced instead of public healthcare. And D, there is an equal distribution of income in the economy. Again, it doesn't show us how firms who are contributing to this productive efficiency in the economy are actually deciding to pay wages and salaries to people, and therefore we don't see whether there is or isn't equal distribution of income in the economy by looking at the production possibility frontier. Right, that's January 2012's paper. Now we're going to go to June 2012. And let's start by looking at question 7. So question 7. An economy is always productively efficient if it again, we've just looked at productive efficiency, so hopefully we understand that concept of maximizing output with a given or with the resources available. So let's have a look at this. A, continually increases average standard of living. Now this isn't necessarily true because, again, productive efficiency doesn't mean that everybody's happy with those outcomes or their socially desirable outcomes. It just means outputs maximized with the given level of resources. B, maximizes investment in capital goods. Again, this isn't necessarily true because when we're looking at an economy and the difference between producing capital or consumer goods, a country might or a government might maximize investment in capital goods. But for example, if a war were to break out and lots of those capital goods were to be destroyed by bombing or fighting, it doesn't matter that investment's been maximized. the economy might still not produce the maximum number of capital goods that it could. C is operating with full employment of labour. And now productive efficiency is when an economy operates with full employment of available resources. Now labour is one of those resources, but it doesn't show it doesn't by itself mean the economy is definitely going to be productively efficient. Okay, so productive efficiency is when there's full employment of all of the available resources. And just to explain on that one, if we were to see a point within the production possibility frontier, so within the curve and closer to zero, this might be because of unemployment of labour, but it could also be because of underutilization of other available factors of production, such as capital or land or enterprise. And D can produce more of one good only by producing less of another. This is correct. Okay, if we imagine that production possibility frontier, okay, which we just saw in the January 2012 paper, if a country lies on its curve, which is what we said as being productively efficient, if an economy wants to produce more of one good and move along the curve, it has to decrease its output or production of the second good. Okay, we'll see this by moving along the curve. One of the axes and one of the goods is going to suffer as a result. So this is another way to define productive efficiency, when one good can be produced only by producing less of another good. Right. Question 14. The diagram below shows the country's production possibility frontier. Okay, so again, we're seeing the difference between all the goods and all the services, so macro level in an economy, and points on a curve, points outside of the curve, or points inside of the curve. Now this is a really important concept here, that points within a production possibility frontier show what I just explained as being the underutilization of resources. So not all available resources are being used to their fullest, and therefore a firm, or in this case a country, are not producing as much as they could with their available resources. Point Z actually shows a point which is unattainable, which means it can't be achieved with the given level of resources. Okay, with the land, labour, capital and enterprise available to a country, or the resources available to a firm, they can't, no matter what they do at that given level, produce at point Z, which would show a higher amount of goods and services, or combination of both. Okay, so therefore with that in mind, C has to be the correct answer, and the questions about which combination of goods and services could be produced with the resources available, W and Y could be, but so could V and X. All the points on or within the curve can be produced. Okay, so therefore C is the correct answer. Now this isn't to say that Y would be desirable to be produced because resources wouldn't be utilised to their fullest, but it can be produced at. Okay, and Z is unattainable because it's outside of the curve. Right, let's go on to January 2013. And we'll go to question 8. A firm is productively efficient when? Okay, great. I'm glad we've stumbled across this question, because we've explained productive efficiency within an economy being when output is maximised with all of the available resources. Also rephrased as one more good can only be produced if less of a second good is produced. Okay, so now when we're looking at a firm being productively efficient, this is slightly different, because firm's productive efficiency is measured at the lowest point on its average total cost curve. Okay, so therefore A is the correct answer, because a firm would be operating at the lowest point on its average total cost curve. This is also known as the efficient scale, or the point in which marginal cost intercepts average total cost. I won't dwell on this one for too long, because it kind of touches on topic 3 and cost of production, but I just wanted to make that distinction between productive efficiency of a firm and an economy. So on to 19. Right, we have a production possibility frontier with cars and vans, and this is that a firm can produce. So we're looking at a microeconomic production possibility curve because it's a combination of goods that a firm can produce, from all cars and zero vans to all vans and zero cars, or anywhere in between. Okay, so when all of its resources are fully and efficiently employed, it will be on the curve. And which one of the following statements is correct? The opportunity cost of producing one more car is, and it's about the opportunity cost being greater, lower, the same, or zero. Or opportunity cost, there's always going to be an opportunity cost, so it can't be zero. So let's rule out D. Now, let's have a look at this. The question's basically asking you, if another car is produced, what's the opportunity cost in terms of the sacrifice to producing vans that's going to be made? And at point X, the curve's flatter, which is really important, flatter towards cars. If you imagine moving along the curve from point X approximately 1 centimeter towards cars, and we'll use this as a given point to producing a car or more cars. To produce that car, because the curve is flatter, this means roughly this amount, if you look at my cursor, of vans has been given up to produce that extra car. Now if we look at point Y, where the curve is steeper, and move up the curve by 1 centimeter again, okay, because 1 centimeter is the given amount I've chosen to look at in increasing the output of cars, because we don't know what one car is worth, because we don't have a scale here. So therefore, in this case, the 1 centimeter increase in production of cars would see less vans given up because you're traveling less distance along the production possibility frontier because it's steeper. So actually, in this case, the opportunity cost of moving from Y to up 1 centimeter, from X to up 1 centimeter, would be lower. So therefore, the opportunity cost of producing one more car is greater at X than Y. Let's just think about Y for a minute, okay? When the firm gets to a point in which they're producing more cars than vans, then to increase their output of cars at this point, or at a higher level, they're taking away their few remaining resources they left on vans. Okay, so these resources they're taking will be better resources or more suited resources to producing vans, and not very good or not very well suited to producing cars. Okay, so always on these types of questions, when the curve moves towards the good on a given axis, the opportunity cost will be higher at higher levels of that good. Okay, so if the firm were to move from this point where my cursor is to this point, you'd be taking away your last remaining resources which you left producing vans, because logically they will be the best at producing vans, and therefore to produce the extra car, you're actually seeing lots of vans being given up because you're taking away your most suited resource to producing vans, okay, and using them for cars instead. Great, so that's those two questions. Let's look at June 2013. And we're going to go to question 2. The diagram below shows an economy's production possibility frontier for consumer goods and capital goods. The movement of the production possibility frontier from SR to ST. So this is SR and this is ST. It's most likely to indicate an increase in. Right, okay. Now, when a curve moves like it has here, let's just eliminate some of the incorrect answers. B, the resources employed in the production of capital goods. Now, if this would have been an increase, this could have been shown by a movement along the curve SR. Okay, because if reallocation of resources is shown by movements along the same curve, so the economy might have been at this point and then thought, actually, we want to allocate more resources to capital goods. Let's produce here instead. Demand for capital goods. Well, again, production possibility frontiers don't actually show us demand for goods. They just show us the possible combinations of goods that can be produced. And the opportunity cost of an increase in the opportunity cost of the production of capital goods in terms of consumer goods. Well, actually, in this case, this isn't the case, because if we take, for example, a point here on capital goods, okay, and look at increasing from this point to this point on SR, the opportunity cost would have been this amount of consumer goods. Okay, if you take roughly the same point again and look at increase in capital goods, okay, there's actually not been an increase in opportunity cost of consumer goods. We'll come back to that point in just a sec when we've explained the correct answer, because it'll help us to illustrate the point as opposed to just randomly using the cursor. Now, A is the correct answer, productivity in the production of capital goods. So, because the countries was producing SR, and now they can produce the same amount of consumer goods, but increase, or there's been an outward shift in the amount of capital goods that can be produced from R to T, okay, which has caused the line to move like this. So therefore, the resources that are used to make capital goods have become more efficient. Okay. So therefore, A, productivity in the production of capital goods is the correct answer. Now on to June 2014, and again question 2. We can see actually as June 13 and 14 I had one question each on production possibility frontiers, which is interesting. Normally you'd have 2, which if you understand the topic well, is 2 marks, which are relatively easy to pick up, which will hopefully give you confidence in the exam too. Now question 2. The diagram below shows 2 production possibility boundaries for an economy. Production possibility curves, same thing. Computers, textiles. The movement of the boundary from EE to FF is likely to have occurred because A, consumers switch their preferences from textiles to computers. Again, this doesn't show us about consumers' tastes or preferences on the curve. It just shows us the different possible combinations of goods that are achievable with the given level, or with the resources available to firms or an economy at a given time. B, there has been an increase in productivity in the computer industry and a decrease in the productivity in the textiles industry. Correct. Okay, why is this correct? Because clearly more computers with the given resources can be produced and less textiles can be produced. So therefore the new curve shows us that resources used to make computers are more productive, or more productively used, because more computers can be made and less textiles goods can be made. Okay. It doesn't show us that the production of computers has become more profitable, because we don't have the given information to be able to tell this. And D, economic resources are being underused in the textiles industry. Well, if this is the case, that could have been shown by a point within EE, because this would have shown us that resources are being underutilized, which means that there would be a point within the curve. That wouldn't necessarily show us a new curve, which, as I just explained, has shown us the computers or resources made to use computers are more productive. So more computers can be made compared to textiles. Right, last but not least, June 2015. Question 1, a production possibility frontier illustrates. Well, nice and easy, I've said it lots of times. So the definition of production possibility frontier, the various combinations of output an economy is currently capable of producing with its limited resources. Okay, it doesn't show us what will be produced, because things can happen to shift curves inwards or outwards, or resources might be underutilized. Okay, so it shows us what's capable of being produced with limited resources. Okay, doesn't show us the maximum output, because curves can shift outward if resources are improved or more resources are gained or found. And it doesn't show us combination with zero opportunity cost, because at each point along a production possibility frontier, there is opportunity cost from moving from one good to a second good. Okay. And the last question I want to look at is question 24. Again, I'm not going to dwell on this one too much because it kind of relates to topic 3, cost of production, but we looked at productive efficiency. So let's just look at productive inefficiency. And a firm is productively efficient if it can lower its average cost of production by reducing its output. Okay, this is the correct answer because we know that for a firm, productive efficiency is when they minimize their average total costs. Okay, so if a firm actually has gone beyond this point, and if they reduce output, they're going to lower their average total cost of production, and therefore this would be them being productively efficient. Okay, so because we know that's true, we know that this must be productive inefficiency if productive efficiency is the minimum point of average costs. The firm shouldn't be able to lower its average cost. Okay, so therefore 24 A is correct. Again, for this one, I won't go through B to D because we'll pick those up on a later video when we look at cost curves, which relate to topic 3 in AQA, economic spec. Okay, great. That's all for now on the video for production possibility frontiers. Like I said, there's usually between 1 to 2 questions in the multiple choice section of the exam that relate to this topic. So it doesn't seem like a lot of marks, but if you know the topic inside out, they're easy marks to pick up, and therefore they're just going to fill you with confidence, and they could ultimately help or hinder you achieve one higher or one lower grade in the examinations. So know this topic really well, and I can assure you you'll be able to answer the questions correctly. Okay, thanks guys.